Madonna showed up to film the hung-up video in a tight leotard, ready to dance for 16 hours straight. Nobody on set knew she had 8 broken ribs. Nobody knew she could barely breathe. And nobody knew that one wrong move could send her to the hospital. What they witnessed that day redefined what determination looks like. August 16th, 2005. Madonna was celebrating her 47th birthday at her English countryside estate with family and friends. It was supposed to be a perfect day. She'd been taking horseback riding lessons for months, getting more confident, enjoying the freedom and control that came from mastering a new skill at an age when most people had stopped challenging themselves physically. The horse was one she'd ridden before, a thoroughbred that usually responded well to her commands. But something spooked the animal that afternoon. Nobody ever figured out exactly what, and it reared up unexpectedly. Madonna, caught off guard, lost her grip and fell backward off the horse, landing hard on the ground. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. She couldn't breathe properly. Every attempt to inhale felt like knives stabbing into her chest. Her husband at the time, Guy Ritchie, ran to her side, terrified by how pale she'd gone, how she was gasping for air like she was drowning. The ambulance arrived within 20 minutes. By the time Madonna reached the hospital, she was in shock, her body trying to process the trauma of the impact. The X-rays told a story that made the doctors wince. 8 broken ribs, not cracked, broken, clean breaks on both sides of her rib cage. Her collarbone had a fracture. Her shoulder was badly bruised. The soft tissue damage was extensive. The lead physician was direct with her. "You're going to need complete rest for at least 3 months. No physical activity, no dancing, no performing. Your ribs need time to heal, and if you stress them too soon, you risk puncturing a lung or causing permanent damage." Madonna listened to this prognosis while trying to breathe through pain medication that wasn't quite strong enough. But even through the haze of pain and drugs, one thought dominated her mind. She had the hung-up video scheduled to shoot in 6 weeks. Hung Up wasn't just any single. It was her comeback after 3 years away from dance music. It was built on a sample from ABBA's Gimme, 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 which ABBA had never licensed before. It was supposed to prove that Madonna, at 47, could still dominate dance floors and MTV. The video treatment had been approved. The choreography was designed. The sets were being built. Everything was riding on this comeback being perfect. 3 months is too long, Madonna told the doctor. "I have to work in 6 weeks. The doctor shook his head. "Your body needs time to heal. Dancing with broken ribs isn't just painful, it's dangerous." Madonna said nothing, but anyone who knew her could have told that doctor he was wasting his breath. She'd made up her mind. She was filming that video in 6 weeks. Broken ribs or not. The 6 weeks that followed were among the most painful of Madonna's life. The first 2 weeks, she could barely get out of bed without help. Every movement, every breath, every attempt to shift position sent waves of agony through her torso. She'd wake up in the middle of the night, having forgotten about the injury, and try to roll over, only to be reminded by pain so sharp it made her cry out. But Madonna had always had an almost superhuman pain tolerance, an ability to compartmentalize physical suffering and push through it that bordered on the pathological. She started physical therapy earlier than the doctors recommended, working with a private specialist who helped her regain mobility without risking further damage. 3 weeks after the accident, she was moving around her house without assistance, though every step still hurt. 4 weeks out, she was doing light stretching, testing her range of motion, seeing what her body could and couldn't do. 5 weeks after the fall, She started reviewing the choreography for Hung Up, running through the moves in her mind, visualizing how she'd execute them despite the pain. And through all of this, she told almost nobody about the extent of her injuries. Her management team knew, her family knew, but the video production crew, the director, the choreographer, they were kept in the dark. Madonna's instructions to her team were clear. Nobody talks about the accident. Nobody mentions the broken ribs. As far as the video shoot was concerned, she was completely healthy and ready to work. The Hung Up video was scheduled to shoot in London over 2 days in late September, exactly 6 weeks after the accident. The concept was simple but demanding. Madonna as a dance instructor, teaching moves in a studio, then cutting to her dancing solo in various locations around London. The choreography was high energy, full of the kind of sharp, athletic movements that Madonna had built her reputation on. Splits, drops to the floor, rapid spins, everything that would stress her still healing ribs. The night before the shoot, Madonna could barely sleep, not from nerves, but from pain. Her ribs had been aching more than usual, probably her body's way of telling her this was a terrible idea. She took pain medication, but not too much. She needed to stay sharp, to be able to perform at full capacity. When she arrived on set that first morning, wearing the now iconic purple leotard and black tights that would define the video's aesthetic, nobody on the crew had any idea what she was dealing with. The director, Johan Renck, went over the shot list with her. The choreographer walked her through the moves one more time. Makeup artists worked on her face, while she mentally prepared herself for what was about to be a very long, very painful day. The leotard was a problem Madonna hadn't fully anticipated. It was tight, form-fitting, designed to show her still incredible physique at 47. But it also meant that the bruising on her torso, which was still visible in yellowish-green patches across her ribcage, would potentially be noticeable on camera. The makeup team had to carefully cover the bruises with body makeup, and Madonna had to position herself in ways that minimized how obvious the residual swelling was. The first few takes were manageable. The moves were relatively simple, and Madonna's muscle memory kicked in, carrying her through the choreography, even as every twist and extension sent sharp pains through her chest. But as the day went on, and the moves got more complex, the pain intensified. There's a moment in the Hung Up video where Madonna drops down into a full split, then pulls herself back up in one fluid motion. It's the kind of move that requires core strength and flexibility, both of which depend heavily on being able to engage your torso muscles. With 8 broken ribs, those muscles couldn't work properly. The pain of trying to execute that move was so intense that Madonna nearly blacked out the first time she attempted it. "Cut," the director called, noticing that something seemed off. Madonna waved him off, forcing a smile. "No, it's fine. Let's go again." The crew thought she was just being a perfectionist, pushing for another take because she wasn't satisfied with her performance. They had no idea she was fighting to stay conscious, that she was tasting blood in her mouth from biting her tongue to keep from screaming. They ran the split sequence 7 times before Madonna was satisfied with the take. By the end of it, she was pale and sweating, though she tried to hide both with jokes and small talk with the crew. During the brief breaks between setups, she'd retreat to her trailer, where her assistant would help her carefully stretch and breathe, trying to manage the pain without taking so much medication that it would show in her eyes on camera. The worst moment came during a sequence that required Madonna to dance with a group of backup dancers, matching their energy and precision while the camera circled around them. The choreography involved a series of rapid turns and drops that put immense pressure on her core. About halfway through the 4th take, Madonna executed a particularly sharp turn and felt something in her ribcage shift in a way that wasn't right. The pain was so sudden and severe that she actually stumbled, which she never did, catching herself on one of the backup dancers to keep from falling. The music kept playing, the dancers kept moving, but there was a moment of visible confusion on their faces. Madonna never stumbled, never lost her balance. What just happened? "Keep going," Madonna hissed through gritted teeth, pushing off from the dancer and forcing herself back into the choreography. The cameras were still rolling. She wasn't going to ruin the take. She finished the sequence, hitting every remaining move with what looked like perfect precision, and only when the director called cut did she allow herself to bend over, hands on her knees, trying to breathe through the stabbing pain in her side. "You okay?" the director asked, approaching her with concern. "Fine," Madonna said, straightening up too quickly and regretting it. "Just lost my breath for a second. Can we see the playback?" What nobody on that set knew was that Madonna was terrified she'd actually rebroken one of her ribs with that turn. The shift she'd felt, the new quality to the pain, it wasn't like anything she'd experienced during her recovery. But she couldn't show fear, couldn't show weakness, couldn't let anyone know that she was potentially seriously injuring herself for this video. The 16-hour shoot day finally ended around 2 a.m. Madonna said her goodbyes to the crew, maintaining the professional, energetic demeanor she'd shown all day. And only when she got into her car did she allow herself to collapse against the seat, tears streaming down her face from exhaustion and pain. Her doctor examined her the next morning and was horrified by what he found. The ribs hadn't rebroken, but she'd definitely aggravated the healing fractures. There was new inflammation, new bruising, and the doctor could see from the way she was moving that she'd done significant damage to the surrounding tissue and muscles. "You filmed a dance video yesterday?" he asked, already knowing the answer, but unable to believe it. Madonna nodded. "You could have punctured a lung," the doctor said. "Do you understand that? One wrong impact, one bad fall, and you could have been in life-threatening danger." "But I didn't fall," Madonna said simply. "Can you wrap my ribs tighter? I have to shoot again today." The second day of filming was somehow worse than the first, because now Madonna's body was inflamed and angry from the previous day's abuse. But she showed up on set, got into costume, and did it all over again. More dancing, more choreography, more pretending that every movement wasn't agony. The crew marveled at her energy, her precision, her absolute professionalism. The director later said it was one of the smoothest shoots he'd ever worked on with a major artist. Nobody complained, nobody caused drama. Madonna just showed up and delivered take after take of perfect performance. It was only after the video wrapped, after Madonna had returned home and the footage was being edited, that her management team quietly informed a few key members of the production that Madonna had filmed the entire video with 8 broken ribs. The reactions ranged from disbelief to horror to awe. The choreographer, when he found out, went back and watched the raw footage again, looking for any sign that Madonna had been in pain. There were tiny moments, micro-expressions that flashed across her face between takes, brief seconds where you could see her steel herself before executing a difficult move. But during the actual performance, nothing. She'd given absolutely no indication that anything was wrong. "I've worked with dancers half her age who would have quit after the first hour," the choreographer said in an interview years later. What Madonna did on that shoot, it wasn't just about physical pain tolerance, it was about mental strength that I've never seen before or since. Hung Up was released in November 2005 and became one of the biggest hits of Madonna's career. It hit #1 in 41 countries, spent weeks at the top of charts globally, and the video became iconic, with the purple leotard moment being referenced and parodied for years afterward. The song marked a triumphant return to dance music for Madonna and proved that at 47 she could still dominate pop culture. But for Madonna, the success of Hung Up meant something more personal than chart positions or sales figures. Every time she saw that video, she knew what it had cost her. She knew that the smooth, effortless-looking performance had been achieved through some of the most intense pain she'd ever endured. And she knew that very few people would ever truly understand what she'd overcome to make it happen. The story of Madonna filming Hung Up with broken ribs eventually became public, though she rarely discussed it in detail. When asked about it in interviews, she would usually deflect, making jokes about being stubborn or saying something like the show must go on. She didn't want to be seen as a victim or as someone looking for sympathy. She'd made a choice to push through the pain, and she'd deal with the consequences. Those consequences included chronic issues with her ribs that would persist for years. The stress she'd put on them during the Hung Up shoot had interfered with proper healing, leaving her with occasional pain and limited mobility in her torso that physical therapy could only partially address. She'd traded complete recovery for the video she wanted, and she'd do it again. Today, Hung Up stands as one of Madonna's signature songs, and the video is considered one of her best. But it's also a testament to something else: the price of perfection, the cost of refusing to give up, the physical and mental toll of being someone who simply will not accept limitations. Madonna could have postponed the shoot. Her label would have understood. Her fans would have waited. Nobody would have blamed her for taking the time she needed to heal properly. But that wasn't who she was. She'd spent her entire career refusing to let obstacles stop her, and 8 broken ribs weren't going to be the thing that finally made her compromise. If this story of pushing through impossible pain to achieve something incredible moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this with someone who needs to remember that sometimes the only way through is through, that giving up is always an option, but so is refusing to quit. Have you ever pushed through something everyone told you was impossible? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more stories about the moments when determination changed everything.